What is the best case of, you just tried to scam the wrong person? About 6 months ago, I had just left a dollar store and drove a 1/4 mile to an auto parts store, not realizing immediately that I had lost my wallet. I had a Apple AirTag in the wallet and my phone showed it as still in the dollar store. I was back at the store in way less than 10 minutes from the time I had left. As I walked in, the signal strength bars increased as I went straight to the cashier, who had rang me up and asked her if she had seen my wallet or if anyone had turned it in. Nope, she stated as I hit the find button to activate a locate sound that began emitting from the pocket of the apron on the same lady who had told me that she hadn't seen my wallet. I said, "Well, that's my wallet making that sound in your pocket." Every one of the 8 or 9 people in her line gasped and said to one another, "That lady tried to steal that guy's wallet."
What was the most satisfying lie you caught someone in? Years ago, my soon-to-be ex-husband and I were in the last and final attempt of trying to come to a guardianship agreement over our 3 small children before it went to Supreme Court. A place I did not want to go. So there in the room was the judge, his secretary, my ex, and I. Almost every question the judge asked my ex was answered with a lie. I never said anything, but the tears wouldn't stop welling in my eyes. All I could think was, why can't this man for once just set his anger and stupid pride aside, and just agree to the wishes of what our children want? The judge finally looked at me and said, "What are your desires for how this should be settled?" My response: "I just want what's best for our kids. I believe it should be up to them if they want to visit him or not. I don't believe they should be forced." Judge: "You are very quiet and I detect no animosity from you. I want to ask you why there has been a communication breakdown between you and your husband." Me: "Because when I try to talk to him, he just yells." That is a lie. My ex yells at the top of his lungs. The judge ruled visitation to be granted as per the children's wishes.
What is the pettiest thing you've seen a cheap person do at a restaurant? Years ago I had a blind date. We had talked on the phone and the guy asked if he could take me to lunch. Not meet me for lunch, but take me. He was inviting me, so I assumed he would pay. We met at a casual inexpensive chain restaurant. I had something modestly priced. It was probably around $7. Like I said, years ago, when the bill came, he told me what my share was. He actually said, "You had the French dip plus an iced tea, so your total is." I was pretty surprised, but I figured that the cost of my lunch was worth finding out what a cheapo he was, so I wouldn't waste any more time dating him. But here's the kicker: he had a buy one get one free coupon, so his meal was free and I paid for mine. That was enough for me. He walked me to my car and asked if he could see me again. I said, no, and he looked surprised and asked why. I said that anyone as cheap as he was shouldn't date. Thank goodness he never called again. Have you ever had anyone test to see if you were faking an allergy intolerance? Yes. I am allergic to shrimp. I had a coworker who was very angry that every time we had a company party, the company would have to make special dishes for me and had to be more careful when preparing my food. He said he thought I was lying. He was very vocal in his opinions when accusing me of just not liking seafood and accusations of wanting to get attention. One time, he got too drunk at one of our parties and decided to add shrimp stock to one of the dishes I was served. I ended up in the hospital getting my stomach pumped and being put on a respirator. After the kitchen crew proved they were not at fault, they checked cameras and saw him enter the kitchen, take a cup full of shrimp stock and pour it into my curry. He lost his career, got sued and did a year in prison. Prior to that I got out of the hospital and beat the shit out of him. My charges got dropped in court, but I got suspended from work for 3 days, with pay. What is the saddest thing about your father and or mother? My dad left my mom after 20 years of marriage for another woman. They married. My dad left behind 3 kids, 2 of us grown and 1 an 11-year-old boy. At one point, years later, my dad had a series of strokes and his new wife put him in an Alzheimer's ward. We got him out and brought him back to his hometown. We overlooked our bitterness and helped him heal. My mom and he got back together. I begged my mom to not give him another chance to break her. She had been healing too. She took him back. We got him restored him to health and he left again. In the middle of the night, to the woman that he had left my mom for. 20 years later, my mom died last year. I sat in her hospital room and stroked her hair as she suffered from COPD and congestive heart failure. At one point she looked up at me and whispered, "You know, I always thought that he would come back." She loved him still and still she waited. Mom died a week later. That is the saddest thing about my mother.
What's the strangest incident that's happened on an airline flight? I had a flight to visit my daughter, so I was getting ready to board. It was a 100 or so seat jet, and when I arrived at the gate, they told me with a chuckle that I'd been randomly selected for additional security screening. I didn't get the joke until they informed me. It turns out I was the only passenger on a flight from Philadelphia to Burlington, Vermont. I boarded the plane and the flight attendant said I could sit wherever I liked. For the first time in my life, I felt compelled to pay close attention to the safety instructions in order to avoid being rude. Once we were in the air, she came over for my drink order. I asked for a Coke and she brought it, saying, "I suppose I'll let you have the whole can. If you need another, just let me know, I'll be right over here." The pilot came on the air and said, "Welcome to the Doug Massey Private Airline. We hope you enjoy your flight to Burlington. After we've reached the cruising altitude, I'll turn off the seatbelt sign and encourage you to try all the other seats in the cabin and let us know which one you like best." It was surreal. What is the smartest thing you've seen a child do? When one of our twins had just turned 5, just a few weeks into kindergarten, I went into our playroom and realized the computer was running Windows 10. I asked my wife if she upgraded it. I asked our then 10-year-old. No and no. Stumped, I finally asked the 5-year-old. He proudly announced that he had as he liked Windows 10. Not quite believing him, I asked him how. He sat down, brought up Google, typed in Windows 10 upgrade instructions, and started reading me the steps. Stunned, I asked, "You can read?" He laughed and said he'd been able to read that well for over a year. I asked him how. He pulled up YouTube for Kids on his tablet and showed me how he had enabled closed captions. He calmly said he'd been reading along since he was 3. He's 6 now. I have yet to find software that will lock down his tablet. He cracks them all. Proud, and a little scared. What was the creepiest text message you've ever received? I had been dating a guy who looked good on paper, however he was not. Long story short, I broke up with him and he didn't take it well. One Saturday evening I was alone, had gotten out of the shower ready to just enjoy a nice night in front of the television. I checked my phone and there was a text that read, "When you see the red dot it will be too late." I hit the floor and unplugged the table light. I see a red dot go right through my living room window. It was moving around sporadically. I then see a green dot, like he was aiming 2 guns at my window. I called 911. The police found him and he had an AR hidden in his spare tire in the trunk of his car, and a pistol on him. I was pretty jumpy for a while after that. I should have dumped him sooner. Lesson learned: never make excuses to your friends about a man and trust your instinct. Get out sooner than later. I'm grateful I didn't become a statistic.
Has acting on a gut feeling ever saved your life? I had taken my dog, a German Shepherd, out for an early morning pee. I had a feeling in my gut that something was not quite right, but when I looked around I did not see anything, but I did become hyper aware of my situational status. My dog had Schutzhund training and I gave him the pass off command, which means to pay attention and watch. A moment later a man appeared from the shadows behind a garbage bin with what looked like a long bladed knife in his hand. I did not give the fast command to attack as I did not want to take the chance that my dog would be hurt, but I did want to scare off the perp, and my dog almost ripped the leash as he lunged towards the man. The fiercest bark I ever heard come out of his mouth. It terrified the man enough that he ran off. I am sure my dog wonders why I never gave the command to attack, as he was ready to give his life for mine. And that, my friends, is why I love animals more than people can. Have you ever denied a customers for short order? Yes, while working as a cashier in a grocery store. One day, an elderly gentleman came to my register wanting to purchase several $100s worth of iTunes gift cards. I immediately smelled rain. I stalled making the sale while the office cashier explained to him that someone was trying to scam him. The gentleman was visibly upset and he insisted that he needed the gift cards to get his granddaughter out of jail. It took several minutes for the gentleman to understand that his granddaughter was not in jail and he was almost a victim of a phony scam. The scammer was on the phone with him the entire time. He was repeatedly trying to tell him to hang up the phone, and began cursing both me and the victim in another language. In broken English, the last thing I heard was, "I hope you rot in hell, run fun, I fuck your mom," followed by a beat. Have you as a police officer ever tightened the handcuffs a bit too much out of anger? Yes, a few times. Once when I was working in the major crime unit, I arrested a 34-year-old guy for rape and assault. His victim was a 13-year-old girl. He broke almost every bone in her face. We knew who we were looking for right away. The young girl was able to ID him, but it took us a few days to find him. The whole time I was getting more pissed off thinking what he did to her, plus I have a daughter that was about the same age. When we finally got him he did put up a fight, which I was praying he would do. The great thing was there was a patrol officer with us that was wearing a body cam, so we had proof he was fighting. Otherwise we would have been looking at abusing a prisoner. After we had him on the ground, he would not stop whining how we were hurting him. Then I put the cuffs on him and he was screaming how tight they were. I told him I would loosen them for him, but by accident I made them a little tighter. My bad. It's always the ones that hurt others that cry when we get them or scream about their rights.